Welcome to Bramstrology, where you are now taking steps to becoming your rare, authentically mastered self using the language of the stars. My name is Brandon, and today we're going to be talking about Moon in Aries and Moon in the first house. So this video is going to be broken down into 3 sections. The first section is the section you're currently watching. The second section is going to be specific to Moon in Aries, and the third section is going to be specific to Moon in the first house. The timestamps for those sections are going to be linked down below in the description. Also in the description box below is going to be links to my website, my Patreon, my social media accounts, and any other videos or resources that I feel are relevant that I mentioned throughout the course of this video. So before we move any further in this video, it's important for you to understand specifically what your moon sign is and where it's placed. The moon glyph is going to look like this. And if you don't know what your moon sign is, you can look in the description box below, and I've linked astro.com as well as some other astrology-based websites that'll be able to generate your chart for you. If you have any questions on how to generate your moon sign, feel free to reach out to me, but there's many resources on the internet to be able to help you get at least that information and get your chart generated. As it relates to the moon is an extremely personal planet, an extremely personal point within your chart. The moon represents your soul, it represents the way that you feel nurtured, what you emotionally need in your life, and it, in old times, used to be what they would use more so for generation of your personality, because they found that the moon had a lot more of an impact on the way that we went about our lives and how we went after what we wanted. Because the moon is what you need to fulfill those solar desires, to fulfill your desires. If your moon is not fulfilled and you're not emotionally regulated and emotionally feel safe, you are not going to be able to go after the things you want. So each person is going to have the moon in their own constellation, and the moon functions very differently in different constellations. So in this video, it's going to be specifically Moon in Aries as well as Moon in the first house. Now, as it relates to the moon in the houses are going to be specific areas of life and specific impacts that it has within those areas of life. So there's a little bit of a difference between a moon in Aries versus a moon in the first house person. There is a different sort of interpretation of those energies. But as for this video, it is going to be broken down into those sections as I mentioned before. So the timestamps for those are below if you want to look at that. So with the moon, it is really an energy that constantly changes. And when you have moon in specific constellations or specific houses, it shows that that theme or that area of life is going to constantly be changing and constantly going to be needing to be addressed to help you maintain your emotional stability and your emotional strength so that you can go on and keep doing what you want. Granted, in this video, I don't really talk much about the aspects to the moon, as that's much more complex and has a lot more things to break down in it. But I will be doing more videos in the future. I will briefly kind of mention it in the moon in the house portion, but overall, I don't really talk about moon aspects in this video. But this video can be applied to people overall that have a moon-Mars aspect, because the moon in Aries is similar to that energy. So I will mention that many times throughout the course of this video because that is something that I've seen in my studies. But other than that, let's get started specifically on the moon in Aries. So you have your moon in Aries. So the moon in Aries is a very powerful energy. First of all, I want you to know that the moon energy, although it's in the sign of Aries, it's very important to look at the aspects and look at the house placement that is specific to the moon sign, as well as what else is kind of going on with Cancer and Mars energy within this as well. So the moon in Aries has a repeating theme of needing to kind of fight for their emotional needs. They're needing to be active, to do things, to be always on the go and always sort of acting out towards what they want. So the moon in Aries in the lower evolved version can be someone that is very impulsive, that is very argumentative, that is very sort of all over the place with what they want. The moon in Aries, because Aries also rules your ambition and your drive and your motivation, these people can have times when they're like doing everything and they're checking off all the boxes and they feel like they're really on a roll. And then other times, the moon in Aries will also kind of not really be entirely motivated. It won't really do a lot of things throughout your day-to-day, and you won't feel like you're being productive. The moon in Aries energy has a theme of really fighting, right? Really taking action. And Aries energy is Martian, it's fighting, it's the forward fight, it's the forward, external, extroverted expression, lots of X's, external extroverted expression of Mars, which means it's going to need to do things and move forward towards its goals. So the Moon in Aries person, although there is an impulsivity to it, these are people that when they have that inspiration that strikes, they're supposed to go and do it. They're supposed to go towards what they want and take that action when that inspiration's there and when they feel the energy. Because the Moon in Aries is also going to have a waxing and waning effect on your energy levels. I mean, that just is naturally for human emotion and human nature in general. But Moon in Aries and also Moon in the first house have this prevalent theme of their energy levels kind of changing, right? This is also kind of similar to someone that has a Cancer ascendant too, but that would be more so on the Moon in Aries placement, and less so, or not the Moon in Aries, the Moon in first house placement, less so the Moon in Aries placement. So with that, the Moon in Aries also represents our relationship with our mother and our relationship with our own emotions and what we need to emotionally regulate. So first of all, with the relationship to the mother, with the Moon in Aries placement, it's going to either have a mother that is very aggressive and sort of like argumentative and difficult in that way, and is very like actively just speaking or like active, or it can manifest as a mother figure that is extremely motivating and extremely inspiring and like always hardworking and always sort of moving forward. So it's important to note there's a distinction between that. Also with the Moon in Aries, the mother figure is going to be a consistent theme in your life and is going to be someone that is going to model a lot of your own motives in life and your own sort of way of life. So the Moon in Aries wants you to really regulate your actions with your feelings. It wants you to really know that what you're doing is in alignment with how you're feeling, and also on the reverse side, what you're feeling is in alignment with what we're doing. So like you want both of those things. You want what you're doing to be in alignment with, you know, what you're feeling, but also what you're feeling to be in alignment with the actions you're taking. So it's kind of both of those things have to be taken into effect. With the Moon in Aries also, it shows a very emotionally, not necessarily volatile, but it can be. The Moon in Aries can be a little volatile, can be a little difficult if it's aspected pretty heavily by other planets. But overall, it is going to be a very powerful moon sign. It's going to be a moon sign that is going to push you and inspire you. Based off the placement of the Moon in Aries, it can require you to have a partner that is able to bring out that lunar quality of that motivation, that inspiration, that sort of drive. Because Moon in Aries people want to really accomplish a lot in this life. They want to really do quite a lot of things. Granted, this can all be sort of understood more with the specifics of your first house, which I haven't really gone into because that's more of the Moon in the first house portion. But with the Moon in Aries, it is something that you're constantly going to want to strive for more, because Aries is the leader. Aries is the initiator. Aries is the first sign. It's the one that goes after what it wants. This is the one that might have more of a really direct way of relating to people and a really direct emotion. It's the people that don't really hide what they're speaking. This is also prevalent in Mercury in Aries too, but the Moon in Aries, when they feel the need to say something or act out or do something, they're gonna do it. They're not gonna wait on it. They're not gonna sit there and be really, not really motivated, not really inspired, not really taking actions and things. Granted, if the Mars in their chart is a little bit difficultly aspected, it might be a little bit difficult for them to manage that energy. But a lot of things in astrology too don't really manifest and really come into fruition until your Saturn return is finished, and then you'll really get to see your chart and really feel your chart in its whole and in its entirety. But overall, with the Moon in Aries, it does have an energy of really pushing you towards your goals, inspiring you, inspiring others, motivating yourself, motivating others, and being physically active too, because the Moon in Aries wants you to be like active and doing things and be very forward moving, because Aries energy doesn't like to stay stagnant. And that's why with the moon being in Aries, it's a placement of the waxing and waning of that sort of motivation, of that drive. So like I said, there could be times when you could go 100% towards your goals, and other times that you don't do anything. And you have to be okay with those moments and understand everything's temporary. Wherever the moon sits, and overall just in life, but where the moon sits specifically is going to show a sort of impermanence, a sort of temporary feeling that comes and goes in your day-to-day. So you'll have, with the moon in Aries, you'll have this motivation, you'll have this drive to do things, you'll feel very physically active, very physically fit, feel like you're checking everything off, right? But then other days you'll feel like you're not doing enough. And a lot of that specifically comes from our parenting, as well as, our great society that we live in that is really driven off of production of energy and movement of energy. But the thing with Aries moons is they need to be constantly going and constantly doing something. And sometimes they have to learn how to rest. The moon and Aries people also are very self-focused, because Aries is the self. Aries is who you are, what you want, your needs, your wants, all those things. But with every moon sign and every sign, you have to also look at the opposite. So with your moon in Aries, there's also this moon in Libra axis that's trying to be manifested and worked into. So the Aries and Libra axis are all about the self versus the other. So the people with moon in Aries, although they are extremely motivated, extremely inspired, extremely positive and all these different things, and they are extremely self-focused, sometimes they're so self-focused that they neglect the people around them and neglect the personal relationships that they may have that they need to foster and need to grow into. So it's really important to balance those energies with the Aries and Libra axis. And also this is all prevalent and specific to just the moon in Aries. But if you have like a heavy 7th house, or you have a Libra ascendant or Libra energy, or a heavy Venus or anything, it's going to pull you in that direction of the other, of partnerships, and it'll be harder for you to self-initiate and do things. Like I have a really good friend, and she has her moon in Aries in the 7th house, and there is this energy of when she's around other people, she's able to get a lot of things done. When she's in other people's energy and one-on-one, she's able to get a lot of things done. She can also transfer that to her own individual life, where she's able to get a lot of things done in herself, but she does want to have a partner there and have someone there to kind of keep her accountable and just kind of be there with her. Because the Aries Libra axis is something that it's great to have a heaviness on one end or a heaviness on the other end, but it's important to know that you're not in this life alone. Moon and Aries people, you're not in this life alone. You're not going to be alone. And you have to know that you can go far, you can go fast by yourself, very moon and Aries, but you can go much further with another person. So make sure that you're doing those actions that are going to push you further in life and are going to motivate you and inspire people. Inspire yourself, inspire others to move further. So make sure you're focusing on your ability and on your strength to move you in the direction that you want. So that's the moon in Aries. We're going to move on to the moon in the 1st house. See you soon. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the moon in the 1st house. So the moon in the 1st house has a different energy to it than the moon in Aries, because the moon in the 1st house is representative of your area of life, not necessarily your own personal thing. So the moon in the 1st house has a predisposition to self-focus, emotional regulation, and the need for that. It's going to make it more prevalent and more important for you to regulate and keep yourself stable. The moon in the 1st house is similar to a Cancer ascendant, where they need to have their emotions unlocked, and they're going to have an emotional nature that's going to be very obvious to others. It's going to be very noticeable of those that they're around, that the moon in the 1st it's there. They can see your feelings, they can see your emotions, they can see the way that you're interacting with things. It's kind of like your emotions are on your sleeve or your heart's on your sleeve, and you kind of wear your emotions proudly, and it makes you very emotionally in tune with yourself. But it also requires you to really regulate your emotions through some sort of body exercise and some sort of body movement. So the moon in the first can have this focus on the self, almost like a emotional attachment to the body, emotional attachment to your looks. Granted, this is all dependent on the sign the moon's in and also the placements that are interacting with the moon and the first house. But overall, it's something that with the moon in Aries, you're going to be looking at yourself a lot. You're gonna have times when you feel great and you feel amazing and you feel like you're on top of the world and you feel like you look great. You have your, you look at the top of your game. But then other times you're gonna feel not the best, and you're gonna feel like you're not worthy and you're not, looking good and you're not doing the right things and you're not projecting yourself the right way. Because the moon in the first, it projects the feelings of not just itself, but the feelings of others. And that's just Cancer energy in general too, and the lunar energy is very emotional and emotionally connected. Granted, once again, this does require you to look at the moon's placements and moon's aspects to see more of the flavors of what's going on and what's interacting with that. But with the moon in the first, you have this need to emotionally project yourself. And sometimes you might project it on others. Sometimes you might realize that the lens that you're looking through and you're looking through for people is extremely emotional and it's sensitive and it's not really something that you can ground yourself in. Because with the moon in the first, it's almost like your life is constantly changing, constantly going up and down, constantly, you have to really learn how to emotionally regulate. That's really it. Because if you can't emotionally regulate, you're not going to be able to do the day-to-day things you're supposed to do. You're not going to be able to go out and do the things that you want, because the moon in the first is so sensitive to its environment and to its actions and to everything. Because the moon in the first, that's the way that you live your life and you interact with the world. And when the moon's there, it's almost like a raw nerve. And you have to learn how to work with not just your emotions, but the emotions of others to navigate your life and navigate the things that you really want to do and move yourself forward. So it is important to know the difference between the moon in the Aries and moon in the first house, but also look at your moon energy to look at what else is going on, see where Cancer's at, see where the dispositor of your moon is at, which if the moon, for example, was in Aries in the first house, which that's wild, but if it was, that would be Mars. So you would look to see where Mars is at. So look at the rulership of your moon sign to get a better idea of what is going on and how that moon energy is being displaced, as well as look at Cancer to look to see where that moon energy is also kind of prevalent and where that waxing and waning effects happening. But back to what I was saying about the moon in the first house. The moon in the first house has this really emotional reaction to things, and they're supposed to really regulate not just their emotions, but the emotions of others, because the moon is so sensitive and so personal to us that everyone's gonna see it. And when everyone sees it, there might be a level of emotional manipulation that others put on you or that you put on others depending on the strength of your own emotions. So it's important for you to have a lot of emotional intelligence, because the moon energy is requiring you to do that. When the moon is very heavily emphasized in a chart, it requires you to increase your emotional intelligence for your own safety and for the safety of others. And with the moon in the first, if your emotions are not regulated, you could definitely act out and definitely do things that are not the best. The moon in the first house people also have kind of a more childish face, more of a kind of young sort of like baby face, lunar energy, right? They're gonna have more of a feminine sort of vibe to them. So you're gonna be more of a person that is more approachable to people emotionally most of the time, unless you have your moon in like Scorpio or Capricorn. But for the most part, with the moon in the first, you're going to be very emotionally approachable. People are going to see you as an emotional, like, safe space. And they're gonna see you as, yes, they're gonna see you as a pinch, as like a raw nerve, but they're also gonna see you as someone that honors their emotions and expresses their emotions authentically. Because the moon there, your emotions are right there. People see them, people feel them, people experience them. That's not gonna go anywhere. But you also experience them too. And your moon and your emotions is the way that you're gonna navigate your world. And when the moon in the first is heavily emphasized in a chart, which any planet in the first house is heavily emphasized, but when the moon in the first house is like, has a bunch of aspects to it and has a lot of focus on it, it's important for you to emotionally balance yourself, because people are going to throw stuff at you throughout the course of your day to see if you can really keep that center and keep that groundedness. So make sure that you're doing a lot of like water work, if that makes any sense. So like really taking baths and taking sort of relaxation, because the moon in the first, you can have this like almost like erratic energy. I know erraticism is more linked to Uranus and Aquarius energy, but the moon in the first, it can be, if it's not regulated, it can be those people that just snap. So it's important for you to really take the time to relax yourself, kind of take a nice bath, a nice shower, go swimming. Swimming would be great for a moon in the first house person, or moon in Aries, moon in Virgo. Like swimming and making a habit of taking care of your body and giving yourself water, drinking lots of water. The moon in the first house too is going to be someone that's going to be very sensitive to the lunation cycles. So during the full moon and new moon, you're going to be very sensitive to that energy. So once again, because of the moon being in the first and being so heavily emphasized, it's going to be a consistent theme for you to emotionally regulate. That's what I've literally been saying this entire time. When the moon or any sort of Cancer energy is really emphasized, you need to emotionally regulate and stabilize yourself so that you can become the most solid person you can, so that you can take those things that are coming at you or kind of coming to like into your reality and not always be so reactive, and let the emotion kind of settle. Because where the moon sits, it's also going to require you to do some self-reflection. It's going to require you to understand that that area of life is never going to really be stable. It's never going to be something that you're going to be able to really, really stabilize all the time. So it's going to be an area you're going to keep revisiting and keep reintegrating. And the moon in the first house is so central to your being and to your way of life that it's going to be something that you're going to need to keep looking at and becoming aware of. Becoming aware of the actions you're taking and how those actions you're taking are in alignment or disalignment with how you feel. A lot of people with moon in the first can be emotionally hijacked by their environment. So, and especially in the day and age that we live in with all these distractions and things, moon in the first can be very easily distractible because they're pulled into the feelings of others. These people care so much about people. They really feel so much about everything around them and everything in their environment. They're extremely intuitive. They're extremely understanding of human emotion, but that doesn't come from just having the moon in the first. It comes from the experience of constantly feeling and refocusing that lunar energy into your identity. So you're aware and you're conscious of how people feel because you're aware and conscious of how you feel. And the more you keep revisiting that, and the more you keep facing yourself and becoming more conscious of how you feel and the triggers you have and the emotional sort of loopholes that you have, or emotional sort of weaknesses and things that you have, you'll be able to understand others much, much better. And that's when the moon in the first house really wants you to do. It wants you to be able to understand your emotions so clearly that you're able to interact with those around you in a way that soothes them, that makes them feel you're safe. And that's the thing, is that the moon and Cancer energy, it wants people to just be safe. So be safe. Take yourself into yourself and be connected to who you are, because the moon in the first, it needs you to have your own emotional safety. And if you're going into an environment, because the moon is our like initial reaction and sort of like our how we interact with the world, because it is in the first house too, it's when you have a bad feeling about an environment, leave. When you have a bad feeling about a person, honor that feeling, honor your instinct, because the moon in the first is going to be something, although yes, it can be hijacked. Yes, it can be sort of taken advantage of. The moon in the first overall is something that it has such a strong intuition to it that when you honor that and you honor your moon and your lunar qualities and your emotions and your gut feelings, because you're going to have some strong, powerful gut feelings, do that and move into wherever you feel better or feel safe. Moon in the first house too can also be placements in people that are very safe at home. They feel very safe at home. They be very, very safe with feminine figures, with more of a homey, maternal sort of vibe. So these people can have a sort of life that is centered around caregiving and maternal structures in that way. They can be much more in tune with their femininity. So people that have moon in the first house or a heavily placed moon energy, maybe they're a male, and in our society, a lot of males are not entirely taught to represent their emotions and feel their emotions. But if you have a male that is very heavily moon and lunar energy, they're going to be very, like, almost sensitive, and it's gonna be foreign to them because society raises a lot of males to be different in the sense of the kind of neglect that lunar quality within them. So it's asking us to really honor that. And it's so interesting when you find a lot of men that have a lot of heavy moon placements. It really is telling of a lot of the things that they signed up for in this life, because the moon is, just like I just said, in our society, men are not looked at as lunar energy. It's not, and what I mean by that is they're not really regarded as lunar energy, as being functioning in lunar energy. But with the moon being heavily placed in a male's chart, it's going to require that energy to be emphasized and be integrated. So it's so interesting to look at that, because astrology is such a intricate, in-depth thing that even with this short video that I made of the moon in the first house and moon in Aries, there's still so much more to this, because you have to look at the moon. Like I said, you have to look at the dispositor for the moon. So if the moon was in Aries, it would be Mars. If the moon was in Gemini, it would be Mercury, so on and so forth. But then you also have to look at the aspects, look at where Cancer is at, like if you have any placements in Cancer, look at those things, because there's so much strength in lunar energy, and there's so much strength within honoring our emotions, that the moon in the first house people need to learn that. And overall within astrology, a lot of people neglect their moon sign, don't understand their moon sign, and don't get to know that because of the conditioning that we've been brought up in. But now with people more realizing their moon signs, their big six, their whole chart, they realize the human nature is much more complex. And behavioral science and behavioral sort of analysis, which is what astrology is so complex and different. And the moon in the first is such a intuitively powerful placement. So if you have the moon in the first and you're interested in a reading with me or learning more about that energy, feel free to look at my website down below, book with me, reach out to me on social media, because I'm just really passionate about this energy. And it's funny because I'm actually filming this on the Pisces full moon, which is really, really interesting. You would think I'd be filming it on an Aries full moon, but I'm filming it on a Pisces full moon. But it's interesting in that sense where there's so much to be talked about with this. And I'm learning to condense my videos to a short form, which is what these are. But you'll see on my channel, I have many long videos that are much longer. But the point being, if you have moon in Aries or moon in the first house, this energy requires you to take action, go after what you want, live your life connected to your feelings, connected to your emotions. So allow yourself to take the action you need to take to move forward. So with that being said, I went on a little longer than I wanted in this video, but that's okay. I appreciate you. I love you. If you are interested in reading with me, like I said, feel free to reach out. I hope you have an amazing day. I'll look forward to talking to you soon. Love you. Bye.